It's Alex!
Well, it's episode 255 of View from 202. Sam is still on vacation. Peaches will be on vacation next week. So we all will be on vacation from podcasting. It's funny how
until
that works
we
out.
record again.
Well, right. But we're coming back to the airwaves after seeing a real live game of Major League Soccer in front of our own eyes, in our own person. League soccer, counted for points that you add up in the table to see who's doing the best and who's doing the worst in the league. And the Red Bulls got 3 of them. A game against DC United on a Sunday night, and it was a 1-0 win. How did it feel to be back on the grind? Huh? Back in RBA, back on Harrison on a Sunday night for what? Probably the first time in a year we've been in Harrison on a Sunday.
Yeah, so much for the idea that Apple, well, I guess Apple is just putting all the games on at the same time. And they said that part of the reasoning for that was that, like, oh yeah, Sunday night games suck. And now they're continuing to have Sunday night games every once in a while. So was there any sort of like, was this rescheduled or was this always on the calendar as for Sunday night?
I guess, was it just because Leagues Cup got Saturday? Was that the rationale?
Maybe, but I was going to say, unlike you, filthy casuals, I went to the League's Cup games, which there was a Sunday matchup.
Well, it's not real. It doesn't count.
Yeah.
That doesn't, that's non-canon event. Right, Luna? Non-canon, 100%. I'm talking about real stuff that counts for points. No penalties, none of that business. In real honest to God soccer where you can draw and each team gets 1 point each. But yeah, it was weird to be back in a way. Although I guess just combination of vacation and fake competition has made it feel longer than usual. Man, it felt like we got back late. I don't know what the deal was. Maybe it's also because, like, and here's a good thing, a good problem to have, I suppose. I swear that the team has gotten worse at celebrating wins. They like do a 45-minute huddle at the middle of the field now, and then take even longer to walk around the stadium. So we waited to see the team do the little, celebration that they do. But
yeah,
it felt like I got back at midnight or something. It was crazy.
Right. I mean, and that's part of why Sunday night games are less than desirable. I mean, I'm sure the path system is running a little bit on lower density, whatever. I don't know what you train people call
frequency.
It. Okay, there you go. But also, yeah, just, the vibes are kind of weird. And just, yeah, I guess I kind of do have to agree that things are getting a little, I mean, it's, obviously a very extremely petty first world problem, but things are a little kind of like sluggish and obligatory about the post-game routine now. But over
COVID and with Struber, they just forgot how it worked.
Yeah. I mean, just, I don't know. We'll have plenty of time in this episode to delve into some of the more spiritual crises going on. But
yeah, it's nice to start the episode with a good problem to have. I guess we're trying to keep the morale up around here,
right?
With some light kvetching before getting into the heavy kvetching. Well, it was a 1-0 win, a late
winner,
a late set piece. Maybe the most haram way to score, but hey, they all count the same. It was a direct set piece, though.
Unholy. Yeah.
From none other than J-My. We got to give the credit. We make fun of the nickname a lot, but hey, J-My delivered this time. Very nice.
Really nifty. Yeah.
And also, as the viewers may know, we sit in section 202, which is behind that goal. And, I think just the way that they set it up as well, I think it was well done, where I didn't expect him to try to bend it around that way. I maybe it's just like it feels like we very rarely go direct at this point. Even though we know that Tolkien's left-footed, everyone knows Tolkien's left-footed. I think it still took everyone a little bit by surprise. So well done.
It seemed like DC was a little lackadaisical in their line building. It seemed like the keeper was rather upset, although that's pretty par for the course when you give up a set piece goal, but still.
Yeah.
Still, taking advantage of the opportunity.
It almost seemed like they weren't set.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So, quick thinking as well as good technique.
Lineup wise, it was a pretty familiar story. We started with Van Zier and Manuel up top. Drew Yearwood played in place of Frankie Amaya, who was ill, I believe, not hurt, but just ill. And then Omir Fernandez and Luquinhas played supporting, attacking midfield roles, whatever you want to call it. And Cam Harper, John Tolkien as the fullbacks, and Reyes and Nealis as the center backs. It's sort of wild that we do just have a pretty stable starting 11 now. That's kind of snuck up on me this year. It felt like I just didn't know what to expect for so much of the beginning Struber part of the season. Even though the personnel maybe wasn't even that volatile under Struber, but quietly, we do have a pretty consistent week-to-week core here, with Drew kind of really being the only disruption. But I expect that in the coming matches, if Frankie's fit, the Frankie and Edelman pairing will return to the middle. One thing that could change, though, is the strike pairing, because Dante Van Zier comes off after like 20 or so minutes. Right?
Yeah, and I just want to add too on the note of reading off the lineup that felt like Van Zier got a weird little like kind of jolt of applause during the starting lineup announcement, to which I comment, "What the fuck is that?"
Yeah,
the guy's not been performing well, so why is he getting a little bit of a cheer? And it's like, I wasn't crazy. We talked to a few different people after the game who were like sitting in different parts of the stadium who, kind of affirmed, noticing that. So kind of weird, guys. Don't want to be really seeing that much more. So
yeah,
that's the end of my little rant.
It's also funny because it's like kind of an extension of sort of a theme or a drum that we beat on here sometimes, where it's like the sensation of like just seeing Red Bulls fans out in the world and being like, hey, like who the fuck are you? Like why, like who are all these people that watch the Red Bulls? And it's, with just how little media and like reporting there is on the Red Bulls, it's sort of funny for me to see that there's people who are like getting the signal from somewhere that like they think that they like Dante Van Zier is like a big player for the team, or should be a big player for the team. Because it's like, if you were following like the limited media coverage of the team, it would be impossible to escape the scandal, which I hope you would have a negative impression of him from that. And then if you were following the games closely, you would notice that he's not really lighting the world on fire, and is at best a nice complimentary attacking piece at best so far. I think the only way that you would get the impression that like, oh, this is our guy, is if like you sort of just are vaguely plugged in to like team announcements and like maybe the occasional tweet or Instagram post. It's like, yeah, here's the big guy, but that's it. And like you get that signal, but like are maybe not more plugged in than that.
Well, I'll read.
But you're still going to the games. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I'll read a little deeper though and say this was honestly just kind of a general blackpilling moment on this whole season and what's kind of been going on with the team lately. But there is a thread that was on the Reddit page, on the subreddit, who I had some fun skirmishes with over the years at OAM, but it was just a thread that was literally just said Dante Van Zier, and it was just kind of like, what do we think about this guy? What goes on here? Like, what do we think about Dante Van Zier? And the comments were just pretty frightening, because it was just a bunch of people. And again, I with the backdrop, as I said, that this guy is not delivering on the field. based on being, the multi-million-dollar bell cow signing in the offseason, not even delivering on the field. And it was a bunch of people rationalizing his racism incident. And anybody who chimed back saying like, well, we're saying that A, that was a fucked up thing to do and we should not be defending it. And B, he kind of sucks on the field also, was just getting destroyed or, downvoted, the fucking Reddit currency, all that kind of stuff. But it was just kind of like, what's on people's minds? What's giving people the impression that that sort of sentiment is acceptable? I don't know. It was pretty distressing thing to see, in all honesty.
Yeah, there's been a weird energy there. The subreddit is particularly interesting because it was pretty dead. It's been pretty dead for most of its history, the subreddit. Yeah. But I did notice the last couple of years that it's like had a slight uptick in activity, which is sort of weird. And every once in a while, I don't think I've expanded on a post in there in a while because the title is often just kind of like really like they don't necessarily even seem bad, but it'll just be a question. It'll be something like that where it just says Dante Van Zier, and I'm like 10 comments. Oh God, which is like a lot for that subreddit. I'm like, oh God, what the fuck is even going to be in here? Right. And it's just like kind of gets me a kick out of me just to see the summary. But it's funny how that it seems to be, or like, there's so many posts that are like, hello, I'm coming to Red Bull Arena for the first time.
Yeah.
Where should I park? And I'm like,
what team should I root for? Yeah. Hey, Red Bulls fans, I'm getting into MLS. What team do you think I should root for?
A visiting fan coming here in peace. Yeah. Where should I park? Is it okay? Will my mirror be vandalized in Newark? Will there be police? That was a real post that I saw.
But no, just, pretty weird. Well, and I'm sorry, I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit that I think that uptick in coverage was that Once a Metro was providing actual analysis to chew on for a few years. But, I don't know. Kind of a weird place, and I feel even weirder about it having read that Van Zier thread. I don't know. People should kind of get some perspective. I don't know.
Yeah, take a look in the mirror. Weird vibe going around in general. And I think, that won't be a new sentiment on this season of this show. Well, this is a weird game on the field too. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
for 85, 90 minutes. It was pretty about as much of a slog as it gets. I think, the combined XG, much as we hate XG, but for this purpose, it's pretty funny. The combined XG of both teams, I think, was less than one goal over the course of the game. So
yeah, this is pretty dire. God, I'm.
It was
DC's not a good team.
Yeah, but it was not as bad as we were saying, not as bad as that game that we traveled to watch at Buzzard Point. Somehow, still somehow a more exciting game than that. But it was just, I mean, I don't know if it's the state of these two teams, which I think it might be, but also like it's been a slog fest every time.
This game has got me thinking while I was sitting there, like, compared to like 7 years ago, but maybe even compared to 5 years ago, 2018, like the floor has certainly risen in MLS on the whole. Like the individual players are fitter and like have more pedigree. But like, has the product gotten better? I don't know. I don't know if it has. I think like
this is certainly a poor vantage. Harrison is a poor vantage point for that, probably. Both,
for the Red Bulls,
both for how in unfluent our play has been the last few years, and then also that a lot of our game is trying to destroy other teams' play.
Yeah, I think there's also like sort of the uncanny valley in between, though, where like a lot of the individual players in the league are a little bit more competent now, where they're competent at disrupting the opponent and like don't make mistakes. So you see fewer games where like teams are coming in and bossing another team and like imposing their system. It really is. It's just very different stylistically from like, 2018 when you saw games like us against LAFC at home, where it was like two teams really dueling out and like having a full speed sort of battle of styles, or even games where like it was sort of one-sided. The good examples would be like when we beat Dallas 3-0 with 10 men,
Right.
or also like those fluke games we would have where like Orlando would put 5 on us because they would just like exploit our high line and we'd make a couple bad examples where everything is sort of evened out a little bit more, which was a criticism I levied against Struber in a way. I mean, although it was a little bit more of a backhanded compliment in a way, because I was admitting that it was sort of successfully guarding against disaster happening. But I'm saying this now about the league in general. It just feels like, this a Wayne Rooney DC United team like 5 years ago would have been actually shittier than this.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Like,
yeah.
And it would have been maybe more interesting.
No, I think that is. I mean, I think it's been going through my head a lot the last few weeks with all the kind of thought about what MLS is now for obvious reasons, and it's just like the most common thing that comes up to me is that there's too many teams now.
Yeah.
But also, I think you're adding an interesting bit of color to it too, where it's like it's the rising level has kind of homogenized things, and one of the appeals of MLS was that, I mean, not to go full into MLS After Dark and just, wacky chaos MLS. It's so crazy. But yes, I mean, things being a little bit lopsided and a little bit, weird week to week was kind of part of the appeal of MLS in its, what I feel like its heyday was for, if you're jaded millennials like us, but, that the league didn't have to be perfect, and that it didn't have to be, not everything was a referendum. Not everything was, following some mission statement. It was just the league in the United States, and some teams were kind of a mess and other teams had it more together. And now it's just, it feels like every team has the same kind of like, agents hooking them up, and just has the same kind of basic level of player. And it results in, like you're saying, Brit, kind of like the fitness levels are higher and there's less mistakes and just fewer kind of, there's less open play. I feel like a lot of the time is what that sort of dynamic generally leads to. And the games are just a little bit less, compelling in all that respect.
Yeah. Well, a decade ago, there was sort of like definitely a sublimated desire for, people definitely wanted to see the Red Bulls and Galaxy play in an MLS Cup. But like people, it never got to the point where people would explicitly sort of like root for that or be like, oh, this is bad for the league. People say that every once in a while, maybe in a few comment sections. And the referendum sort of energy was channeled into like the really dumb, like, the All-Star game and stuff like that. Like it'd be like, oh no, the All-Stars lost to Bayern Munich, or like Man United like 6-1. And that feels sort of, I don't miss that kind of discourse either, but maybe there's something to be said about having that as sort of a classic literal scapegoat, to just like send that goat out to the wilderness with all that energy instead of it being a week in, week out sort of thing. And it just reminds me of the conversation we were having a couple weeks ago about what a weird inflection, like perfect Goldilocks point that 2014 All-Star game was, where it felt like weirdly competitive and compelling. But enough stuff.
Well, and I'll just add one more part of it where it's just like, a lot of the discourse about MLS through its whole history has been parody, and how teams are all have the speed brakes on and salary capped, and the teams can't dominate the league, and just along the lines of what we're saying about things getting kind of like homogenized here, that's felt so much more increased, where to the point where it's like, not only are there so many teams, there's just a higher volume of teams that you have to track and know about. But it's also that I never have any idea whether a team is doing well or bad.
Yeah.
It feels like it changes, over the course of seasons, within seasons. It's always just rapidly going up and down for every club in the league. And, even our discourse about, spending, where it's like the big spending teams and the low spending teams don't even correlate into any kind of hierarchy. So it's all just kind of disorienting, and just, there's there's not a lot of there in MLS recently, if you catch our drift, which I would hope you do after however many years of listening to this show you've done.
Was it exciting to see Christian Benteke, though?
Yeah.
That's a name that, a couple years ago, that would have been a big deal for him to be
Crystal
over here.
Palace fans might remember.
Yeah, well, I guess this is another topic that we'll increasingly get into as the show goes on, but it's just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like for the same amount of both, actual, money layout and opportunity costs that's been spent on shuffling between Fabio and Ashley Fletcher and Corey Burke and all these guys over the last few years, it should be well within Red Bull's resources to just get a guy like Christian Benteke.
Yeah.
Well, I was also going to say...
What's going on there?
Well, I was also going to say, I think a big part of that feeling of our league and everyone having kind of meh teams comes from this kind of talent generation being mostly this kind of PR machine where we're driving hype for every kid to the point where there's no there's no juice left.
Yeah, this is not just a Red Bulls problem.
Right.
I mean, we're criticizing the whole league here, and
but also
Red Bull
this is a
of,
global football problem.
Red Bull was on the vanguard of it for sure, but then both in MLS and the game as a whole, there's been such a emphasis on youth players and just newness and just. That's become very exhausting too.
Which, I thought if we're talking kind of referendums, if you watch the way that Benteke carried himself on the field against our, us,
children,
and you could see this has got an established Premier League talent, he's a proven goal scorer. He has this wisdom about him.
He has fundamental skills that, are never going to leave even as he gets aged.
And
that he
it's
learned,
very respectable.
That he learned through playing at a high level.
And you see him play and you're maybe there is a point to that kind of experience being necessary. Because, he was just...
And to be clear, I was... Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, he's manhandling Sean Nealis the entire game. And you expect, Sean Nealis to be able to be a big physical guy against, most dudes, Long Island, lacrosse build or whatever.
Yeah, that was to the extent that DC was able to create some, juice or some action. It was dumping it up to Benteke, both in the air and on the ground, and him able to just make it stick in the final third, which, like I just said, it's kind of been an issue that, the Red Bulls have been trying to solve for years and years. But just having a forward who you can just launch it into and make the ball stick
which
in the final third is such an asset. And it was just very, like we're saying now, just a very interesting exercise to watch DC have basically that and then nothing else in their team.
And, if you talk about constructive Belgian talent in attack that game, it was definitely, I would say Christian Benteke did more, which is why I'm saying, still that I think we should just totally go left field and sign Eden Hazard to play for us.
I thought you were going to say Giroud. I thought that was your name.
Yeah, both of them together.
Giroud still got it though.
He's destroying.
What is Hazard doing? What's he up
He's
to?
a free agent.
He just got cut by Madrid.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
That's what I'm saying.
He was at Madrid this whole time.
Just literally doing
he played
nothing.
10 games.
He was, he was
hero.
He was like the Marcus Epps of Madrid.
Ooh, that's a name.
Yeah.
What's his brother up to? His brother was probably playing more. Yeah.
Didn't he get to the Premier League recently? He was on Mönchengladbach for a while.
For a while.
Whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. It's all right, fuck, I'm gonna rip off the Band-Aid. There was a tweet that Tom Bogert made that wasn't perfect, but it was sort of criticizing the Red Bulls, and I appreciate the angle because he was sort of taking the piss out of the club for being for celebrating Messi coming into town so much when we used to be a club that signed players. And Bogert had a follow-up tweet that was I'm not even asking the Red Bulls, or I'm not even saying they should sign another Thierry Henry, but they had guys like Dax, Sasha, and BWP that they didn't replace. And the specifics are a little bit, take it or leave it. I think those guys all left in different ways, but it did get my brain thinking that in a lot of ways, I think Sasha is sort of an interesting character to land on there, because he's a guy where by the time his time with the club was over. There were not, everyone was pretty sick of each other. He was ready to move on. The fans are sort of ready to move on.
He was getting older.
So there was not any, unrequited love left on the table between us. But like his tenure with the club is interesting to look at because like there's a real feeling looking back, and even at the time when we signed him in 2015, of like even sort of being in this transitional place with Pecky being gone, moving on beyond Henry, of like, oh, we need to get a guy to like anchor the midfield and be a creative presence in the midfield, and he was that for 3 years, or 3 seasons. And then Kaku now feels like a total bizarre fever dream that, our hopes of him he did replace Sasha for a year.
Spectacularly.
Yeah. But now in hindsight, it's clear that like he, whatever plan there was for Kaku, it was not as much of a substantial, like, this is our next Sasha type player to anchor the midfield. Like that to the extent that thought ever existed, it seems to no longer have. And I think that players, that kind of, senior established player, who doesn't have to be, Eden Hazard or whatever. It doesn't have to be Messi. It doesn't have to be Busquets, is sort of like a presence that's been missing in the squad. Certainly since 2019 or 2020, Kaku, for all of his talent, was a younger player.
And not really a clubhouse leader, didn't speak English.
Famously lost his composure a couple times.
Right.
And BWP eventually, retired and hit the wall. The way that we handled those guys turning out was not great. But I think the Benteke conversations reminded me of this. Where like it is wild that Corey Burke is sort of the only more senior guy that we brought in, and like having just this core of strikers who all run after the ball on these long diagonal runs is I'm getting tired of it. It's nice to see somebody sort of just like have the ball stick to their feet a little bit. Even though Lord knows it wasn't really exciting to watch DC either. This game was tough. I'm getting sick of these types of characters. I'm gonna say it.
No, I think that's all. I mean, Bogart's general article, I think, gives a lot more nuance to it's not really anything groundbreaking to somebody who's been following the club closely for a while, but it gives a lot more nuance to the idea that, kind of like the tweet that you're mentioning, Brit, that, it doesn't have to be, a global A-list superstar. I don't think there's household name superstars really exist outside of like 4 or 5 people in the sport at any given time, certainly in this country. So it's not even really like, it was an acknowledgement that, it's not even really like a thing where you have to have a star. And I think it's just, and he didn't really connect the dots to come out and say this, the way I'm going to, but it's that, you need to have a good team. I mean, it's kind of trite and simple to say that, but there hasn't been a quote unquote star for the Red Bulls in a while because just mid teams, players on just mid teams that don't accomplish much generally don't get called stars. That's just the way it works. I mean, guys, Dennis Bouanga wasn't a star when he showed up to LAFC, but then he started being a central part of them winning trophies, and now he's an MLS star. BWP was not a star when he showed up, but then he was a central part of a really good team, and everybody called him a star. So I think it's more of a, trickle down thing, and if you've followed the Red Bulls and you've followed, this pod and my writing, what have you, over the years, you've known that we emphasize that it is, a management problem. The players are pro athletes who are doing the best you can. Maybe there's little quibbles here and there about effort in some games, but most of those even still trickle up to the fact that it is the coach and the management that sign the players and put them in positions to succeed. And that hasn't really happened for 5 years now. So of course nobody's become a star. Of course nobody calls anybody on the Red Bulls a star because there hasn't been any star-making activity taking place.
But also every time we seem to have anyone who starts rising in that kind of like ability to capture any attention, they immediately get injured too.
Well, there's that, or they get mismanaged. I mean, we certainly saw that.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
also true.
It's the entire basis of my stupid joke about here's a name some of the older Red Bulls fans might remember. I mean, nobody gets a chance to just kind of level out and succeed. Everybody gets doghoused or, sold or, what have you, too quickly. And I think, yeah, I mean, sort of, there's a kind of like a tendril of what you were getting at just now, Brit, about that. Yeah, once Sasha left and the 2018 team, Sasha left in the Shield teams, I should say, going further up into, 2018, 2019, when things started to unravel under Armas and Hamlet. I'm going to go ahead and hammer away here. There it's just like, I think once Jesse Marsh left and there was basically nobody except Dennis Hamlet minding the store, I don't think you had anybody who had a very firm grasp of how to build a team and how to build a clubhouse and how to let guys progress. And I think there was just a lot of weird flailing going on. And then you had the Thelwell era where, he didn't stick around for long, obviously, but there seemed to be some sort of ethos being put into place about, okay, we're going to get a big core of players. They're going to be kind of young, but we're going to let them kind of cook for a little bit and see what's going to happen. Then obviously the Struber feud happened. It was not good enough for Struber and his career to wait for these kids to develop. And now we just have a complete mess of a squad building strategy in the last few years. And Schneider came in and didn't seem to, other than Von Zier, who we've already been over in this episode, didn't really seem to fix any of those complaints either. So it's really kind of a void right now as far as what the club is even trying to do, what the plan is short or long term for this club on the field. So yeah, on top of all the off field stuff that we're about to get into, that the backdrop of all that is that on field is as much of a mystery as it's ever been.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting way of looking at it too, because I think it also gets me thinking back to what I started sort of my review of this game saying, that the lineup has been remarkably consistent in the last couple months, which I think gets me thinking that Troy, in his very limited and sort of confined window that he has here, I think is doing the most coherent thing that he can, which is sort of consistently put out a team that has giving an opportunity to try to build week to week. I think it's sort of frustrating. As we've complained a lot, that we had this weird Leagues Cup interlude in between. If you look at our form guide right now, it's like our form looks great, but like 80% of those games didn't count for anything. So if you go back to our last league games, it was kind of rough. But, Troy, I think putting out a consistent and like coherent 11 and seemingly having a sort of coherent game plan and getting them combining a little bit and using a little bit more intuition, their soccer intuition that they developed as players over their 20 years of life,
right,
is an improvement over what Struber was doing for sure. And you're seeing that the difference between like literally being in last place in the league and slowly climbing up to like, what is it, 10th, 11th in the table. And it's still certainly short of like inspiring, though it's like a nice sanity check that like, okay, if you just sort of put in somebody who does like basic, competent, coherent stuff, we will like at least revert to the mean, as opposed to the insane situation that was going on under Struber. It does really like make this season feel like, as the more positive version has been house money, but the more negative is lost, which does get me think, when I was watching this game, I was like, oh man, like this, especially compared to even like 2011 or 2021 rather, when we were thinking, oh, maybe we'll like ride a really, really sharp defense to like a freak cup title or something. Right. This one, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't even know. Like this, I think we'll beat the bad teams like DC every once in a while by playing solid and getting a set piece goal or something. But like this really like
Not really anything special.
not really anything special going right here. So like, when we get to October, November, and if we do play a playoff game and lose, it's like I don't want to be reading posts being like, every October my hopes get up and they dash it. It's like my brother in Christ. Sorry to indulge that, but like, it's we've been here for a couple months now.
Yeah.
Like it's been that time.
Just don't put your hopes up this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess in the beginning when you were saying that, it snuck up on you that there was a, kind of consistent starting 11, I was wondering if that might be because you're like a little underwhelmed by, or like you're expecting something maybe somehow different, but then you look at kind of like who can play on this team, and it's like, I guess I don't know what I expect beyond this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if it was his post or if he was replying to somebody, but I mean, Eric Friedlander, our good friend, kind of went ahead and just kind of rendered the verdict, which we've become, which we've been kind of laying out the last few minutes, increasingly agreed that there is just kind of a straight up talent problem in the squad now, and just we've touched on earlier the rising tide of MLS. I think there does need to be a few more pieces for this team to be able to expect to win more games than not. And will we get that? That's a question for another day. But I think for right now, I'm not under any illusion that this is one of the better teams in MLS.
I was gonna say, is it a question for another day, or is that like it's in the news right now, right?
Well,
that we're going for it.
Our general manager.
We're going for it for 2024.
Wait, what's this? Sorry, I'm slow on the uptake here.
DeGrandpre saying that that we're gonna start spending money now.
Oh, he said that?
Yeah. You didn't see that? He's done like a few different interviews.
He's been talking.
I thought he was just bragging about how much money we were making on
this game. He's been doing
on
that, but I mean, I don't know which publication it was on, or if he was on like Last Call with Carson Daly, or I don't know, fucking at midnight or whatever. But he was everywhere
Red
this
Eye
week.
On Fox,
He might have been on Red Eye, might have been on Come Down. Like he was, I don't know.
Adam Friedland show.
Yeah, I don't know. He might have been on. Yeah, who knows? But
he was on that Bobby whatever.
He was
podcast.
on Chapo Trap House. Marc DeGrandpre said that we're going back to spending money. We're going back to the full spend. I don't know what the specific quote was, but he said
chicken shop date with Amelia.
I don't know what the specific quote was, but it was something along the lines of that, in response to some inane thing about Messi, just saying that we now recognize that we need to have international stars and we're going to spend millions to bring them in now.
More Dante Van Zers.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, one of the first problems with that is that. And, to be fair, Tom Bogart touched on this in the article we were talking on earlier. The team kind of has been spending money.
Right.
Even as things have been like a weird kind of doldrums the last half decade, the team has still been spending more than it ever has. They've signed like 4 strikers for, multi-million-dollar fees in the last few years. And, for various reasons that we've been spelling out short and long term on this show, none of that's worked out. So the idea that all of us, that it would be any sort of change to all of a sudden be buying guys, I don't think that's really the problem. I think having a coherent, plan and management in place is a bigger part of the problem, but that, is not a sexy thing to tell to, I don't know, Middlesex County Business Journal or whatever he was talking to this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I know a guy who would only sign good guys for the team. So
yeah,
if we ever had to replace Jokin.
I listen to all of my Marc DeGrandpre radio or content when I just have a nice thick flannel blanket on my lap. I've got a nice cup of tea and I'm reading Robert Nozick in my den somewhere in Morris County, that's how I consume all my news. But $5 million on Vanzier, $2 million on Manuel or something.
Like $4 million on Klimala that was then just
We got
thrown in the
1-0
trash.
back.
We need
Yeah.
a sporting director is what we need.
Yeah.
You know, is and honestly, and I've said this before, like it seems like we just need a proper club president sometimes, you know, like with
Well, it's supposed to be Marc de Grandpré, and
Is
then
it? Is he even?
and then you see shit like this.
I thought he was just like sales and like
I mean, well, yeah,
GM.
it's part of, you know, just the mystery and the enigma of what Red Bull is and
corporate
who's in
structure,
charge.
yeah.
But, you know, I mean, and that's been part of what's been coming up in some of the discourse this week as de Grandpré put himself in the news, is that supposedly he does oversee a lot of the soccer operation. He does sign off. Maybe it's just budgeting and stuff like that, but he does have some sort of, you know, hand in the cookie jar as far as the soccer operation going, because otherwise, like you were just saying, Brett, the idea is that, yeah, we have the people running soccer, and then de Grandpré is strictly Mr. Soft Drink marketer who's just running, you know, marketing and sales and sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, when you know, you have that sort of kind of muddled understanding of what his role is and who's in charge of the club, then you do have to kind of read into these things and these statements when he comes out and makes them, and kind of a weird one this week.
It's also funny. I mean, they dropped you know, hints or a leak that we're looking to sell the name to the stadium again, which like it seems like I don't know if the people inside or, you know, people outside have made up their mind for like whether it's more prestigious or not to sell the name. Like it seems like they're waffling back and forth on like, oh, maybe it would be more prestigious to have like a sponsored name.
And yeah, the idea of like leaking that out there, which they did obviously a few years ago, as we've joked on Twitter, that they said that they were going to change them. Do they think that's some kind of like Easter egg? Do they think that's some kind of like little fan service or something?
Right.
Do you think anybody cares about that? And that's kind of like the undercurrent of all of this stuff about de Grandpré. It's like we're not rooting for Red Bull's bottom line, and that feels like, I mean, it feels like a kind of a trite thing to say, you know, because, you know, that's kind of the general kind of, you know, dumb hater thing on this club. It's just like, oh, it's just a billboard. It's just to sell energy drinks. But I think in a more kind of like granular sense, when you're actually looking at what's been going on with this club the last few years, why do they think we give a shit about, you know, that we're selling, you know, X amount of sponsorships off the Messi game, or that we're attracting, you know, what sort of events to the venue or whatever. I mean, you don't get to talk about that stuff when the team itself, the, you know, entire basis for the stadium and the club existing has been a mess for a few years, and fan apathy is at its highest level probably ever.
Which is, I mean, it's funny because I think it's just obviously that went outside of its intended audience, which is just kind of like a B2B kind of like, oh yeah, we're doing like great stuff as a business. And he's kind of like talking as though, you know, like he would talk to maybe other executives only about this kind of stuff without, you know, putting together that, hey, there is kind of this disconnect.
It feels like
it's a problem when the team is bad, and it's a problem when that's, you know, we don't hear from the sporting people pretty much ever. We don't.
Right.
And like I just said, I mean, de Grandpré's supposedly overseeing that and responsible for what's happening going on the sporting side. So we need to hear more than the B2B stuff, you're saying.
But that's like, you know, he's like, oh, that's what we should be talking about. Like, we're patting ourselves on the back for all the good like business that we're doing.
Right.
When, like, what you see with your eyes is clearly like it's very disconnected.
It does
with
feel
what he's
like
saying.
it's, and I say this to be condemning.
Yeah, the point is to be a soccer team,
not to
seriously,
take them off the hook. But like, it does feel reflective of just like the general cultural superstructure in a way. I think like the most vulgar version of this was definitely like crypto and everything, and now AI. Like, so much commentary is like meta commentary about like, oh, this is what the smart like investment is, and then like there is no there. Like, crypto is the most extreme example of there really being no there, you know. Like it feels like even though crypto has been sort of thankfully defeated, hopefully for now, like that is still, the remnants of that are like sticking around with it. And like, I think maybe, you know, it sucks that Red Bull New York is one place where it's sort of sticking around. But here's a line some older fans of internet forums might remember: "You can't support a financial group, mate." But can you? I guess you can. I guess fucking
you
Divine
can
Men won.
once we sell the rights for Meta Stadium that you can exclusively experience also in the metaverse on Meta devices.
Okay, are you at liberty to discuss that? Are you?
No, I mean,
okay?
No, because I don't work for Facebook, I guess, or Meta as their. No.
But for better and for worse,
X
though,
Stadium.
one of the weirder things about this team has been it's never been clear like how much the money matters. Like, does the money matter? Like,
Right.
There's no way they're
Do they have to like beg for millions? Do they get a set budget? Because I mean,
Right.
it seems like both in the sense of like it would be an intuitive way to run the business when you have kind of the loose organizational structure the Red Bull has, and it's the general way that soccer teams and sports teams kind of run. That when you come up on a player that you want to get, you buy him and figure out the pricing later.
Yeah.
You don't have to like go ahead and say, oh, we're going to spend X amount of money regardless of who's even on the table.
Like presumably Red Bull New York has like never made money. Like
Right.
I don't think that's why Red Bull got involved with a team here, like for the
Right.
yearly profit and loss, so it's sort of funny to hear conversation about that. Also, like over the years, like the gap between signing Henry and then like spending $6 million on Kaku was only like, Henry was here till 2014, so it's like only 4 years in between. Like it's actually kind of hard to argue there's been a period where like we've been under like strict orders to do austerity. There's these
Right.
weird moments that pop up where it just seems like the only thing you have to do to actually spend multiple $1 million for Red Bull New York is ask.
Yeah,
right.
And it seems like, Dennis Hamlet can ask to spend money on people
He
and
just
they'll be like,
hasn't.
yeah, sure, whatever.
He just doesn't know how to find guys.
Yeah.
I mean, then this is a whole other sidebar. I mean, that I've already kind of given a spiel on earlier in the episode, but like, yeah, I think that's a good point, Britt, where it's just like, generally this club has been able to access transfer money when there's a target. I think the main issue is that whenever Dennis Hamlet has been left in charge, which has been an oddly large amount of time ever since Marsh has left, I don't think he really knows how to put a transfer together. I think he needed Thelwell to help him put up the one transfer window where this club actually signed more players than just like Mohamed Keita and Fidel Escobar.
Yeah.
And then Thelwell left, and now we're back to very Hamletian transfer windows, even though Schneider's supposedly in charge. We're signing back Kyle Duncan every freaking window.
If we do it one more time,
we're signing random agent setups from Brazil, and Colombia now.
If we do sign Kyle Duncan one more time, like the financial authorities have to be involved.
Fiduciary responsibility. No, I was gonna say it's the kind of thing like there's that variety of comedy act where somebody will just like repeat something like for like 30 minutes and it goes in like weird waves where like the fifth time through everyone's groaning and hates it, but like the ninth time through it becomes funny again.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
13th time through everyone's booing and like hissing. 20th time everyone's howling with laughter. I think I'm like in the bottom of that cycle, and if we sign Duncan again, I'm gonna start.
You'll be a cult hero.
Yeah, I'll be like hooting and hollering and be like, "Welcome back, boyhood club." Now that he's been an inverted fullback. Let's just play him as striker next year. Fuck it. Honestly, at this point. Yeah. That brings us to Miami. CF.
Oh yeah,
Miami.
why was Marc de Grand Prix out impressive?
Yeah.
There must be something special about this game. It seems to be a very important game to them for some reason.
Miami
break
is
up
really
all of the stops.
Is actually kind of the manifestation of kind of a lot of the themes you're talking about too. Because I mean, I guess they did win Leagues Cup, and I guess they're up to the final in the U.S. Open Cup again already because Cincinnati choked. So regretfully, that I guess is a bit of results, if you want to consider it. But they're sort of this made flesh in some ways because it's like so much hype. I did see somebody walking around the city wearing a Messi jersey already. Ugh. But so much hype, but like they're in last fucking place. Like it's just like a very good example of like, does winning matter? But I guess this will be their first league game with Messi and Busquets.
Yeah.
And I think people are maybe sleeping on the Busquets part of this too.
Totally.
So
that's not. I mean, Pirlo was just kind of loafing it, but Busquets seems to be actually, kind of up for it a bit.
He's pinging it around, yeah.
And that's definitely a different class of midfielder than you ever see in MLS.
Yeah, the Busquets is sort of the Keane to Beckham relationship here on this team, I think. But yeah, the time has come. Miami's here on Saturday. And have you guys tickets sold? As I mentioned on the last podcast, have been, reverse karmically punished for, taking up and taking a stand against Dante Vanzer. So I don't have a ticket to sell. I don't have a ticket to flip to even consider.
I listed mine high enough where it's like I kind of want to go, I guess, just because. So
you listed it high enough that
it's
if it's sold, you're like, okay, I made a shitload of money.
Yeah,
but if it doesn't sell, you're like, okay, I get to go.
Right. If it sells, it's like, okay, that's like a month's salary.
Jesus. Who are these people who spend this money,
Hype beasts, I think status seekers usually.
We've been over it. I guess we haven't really been over Messi a lot on the show recently for we
broke the seal a
stylistic
while ago,
reasons. But I'm somebody who I generally have an antipathy against, just hype and just hero worship and all that kind of stuff in general. And Messi in particular has just never really done anything for me. Even when he was younger, I was never that into Barcelona, or that whole thing. And just, he's just never really done it for me. I mean, I'm not a Ronaldo guy, certainly. And I'm a little bit more of a Zlatan guy, if you want to, press me on one of the iconic players of our generation. But Messi's never really done it for me. But putting myself in the shoes or in the head of somebody who, just likes soccer and respects that Lionel Messi is, one of the great players of all time and the greatest player of his generation or what that. And it's just like, oh, he's coming through my town for maybe the one to play, let's be honest, a real game. It's still, it's a real game. We were ragging on the Leagues Cup for not being real games. MLS is a real game. It's going to be a real competition for points. I'm going to see Messi's coming through my town to play a real game for points. I won't get that opportunity again. So yeah, I'll spend a few $100s on this. I can see that, I respect that to some extent. That's not, if you're a fan of, or not a fan of my Twitter presence, I mean, that's not really, who I'm necessarily blaming or mad at in the whole Messi situation. Cause it's normal for people to be, into
excited
super
about
hyped celebrity players or whatever. It's just MLS and its clubs just completely debasing themselves to turn this into the, AEG Messi concert series. It's just so embarrassing and just not going to reap any sort of long-term dividends for the league, as we've kind of been over. So
yeah, I mean, to that point, I'm kind of looking forward to being able to see him just loaf around and walk about on the field really lazily a little bit, but
he might not even play. There's the other end that he and Martino have been
talking load management.
Yeah,
but I'm not more excited to see him play than I was to see Didier Drogba play. I was way more excited to see
hipster.
Drogba play.
I saw Shaqiri play.
Exactly. Shaqiri,
yeah. I saw
he was rectangular.
I saw Ravel Morrison. I shook Ravel Morrison's hand.
You shook his hand?
I fucking ran into him in the parking lot.
Wow.
In DC.
That's incredible. But and part of me is relieved that he is actually banging in a couple goals. It would be much more annoying if he actually was not playing well, like he was for PSG apparently for an entire year.
Yeah.
So it's okay, well at least they're delivering a bit. But yeah, it does make
only
it all
cup
feel
tournament
hyper-real.
So far though, So
yeah, we'll see. Maybe
maybe he just never scores in the league play. That'd be really funny.
I do wish we had, a Felipe type player who would sort of not genuflect to him.
Yeah.
A bit. Maybe
We should play
Reyes
Drew.
will get stuck in a bit.
I feel like Drew
Will it be an
is
accident? Maybe.
Drew and Amaya are players who,
There was
might
an
not
article that-
respect as much.
There was an article this week that mentioned, like, I don't think it was really specified which, but players on the Red Bulls who are gonna like be gunning for Messi or Busquets shirt or whatever. And I think that's lame. But one player who I don't suspect is part of that, who maybe listeners will be surprised by, is Tolkien. I think Tolkien really might be one of the prime candidates to like be up for this and, get stuck in a little bit and want to, leave an impression. I can't remember if it was him or Caden Clark that had some moment in a game a couple years ago where they bodied like some big veteran player, and it was kind of like a little bit of an exclamation point moment. But I think Tolkien is one of the players most capable of that in this squad right now, even though, as we've been over in this episode, it might be a little bit of a, kind of mid squad.
Well, I was going to say, I was trying to figure out how to work this bit where, I can't believe that the first question they asked at the GOP debate was about Dax McCarty getting a Messi jersey.
Oh, God.
We did get questions about this match in particular. The first one from a familiar username, Windsurfing with Sting and Monster, asked me, will no one rid me of this turbulent Lionel? Hopefully. Inshallah, it will be John Tolkien. Marco Antonio Greco asks, Barlow or Messi?
In what context?
I was just-
In what context,
That's it.
Marco?
I would say Barlow had a okay game last game, actually. He seemed a little more
real
active.
nifty,
Yeah.
I don't know if I was just comparing him to like how Van Zer was playing, but yeah, you could get some passes in the midfield.
I'm
Like,
vindicated again.
He was
I
finding-
continue to refuse to get on the hate train.
Yeah. I mean, he was finding that space, like, he was finding the ball in front of the center backs instead of, like, running out to the
Turning
end line
around.
and nowhere. Yeah.
But Messi could never star in the 4 weeks at number one in the box office hit Barbie.
That's true.
Yeah, Messi does not have the Ken
He's not
Right.
good.
physiognomy.
Okay, so I guess
That's a word that I learned this week.
we've talked about putting our shoes in our feet in the shoes of one who buys the tickets for hundreds of dollars. Amanda asks, how do y'all feel about people who bought tickets for the purpose of selling them?
Scalpers.
Hustlers.
Yeah.
Fucking
Is that
G's.
grind set?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I think this is a loaded question coming from Amanda because, because Amanda sold her ticket to pay for surgery or like the deductible.
So she's done a bunch of interviews
Global sensation.
about that.
But
She didn't buy. She already had
exactly.
a season
That's
ticket.
what I
Right,
think.
that's not
It's
the
like
same
I think
thing.
if you're being rewarded for your season ticket, it's one thing. But if you were like trying to flip it, I don't know. Like the victim here, who like is there? It's a victimless crime. You're just helping the economy.
It feels like a very Newman from Seinfeld scheme to pull. Like, I don't know.
I won't be interested until the tickets somehow get stolen from someone's digital wallet, like all their bored apes.
Oh God.
All my bored Messies are gone.
I can't wait to see some of the fake barcodes or whatever that try to get passed off this weekend.
God, yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if there's just straight up like, I don't know. I mean, we've kind of commented on RBA being, I guess the Barcelona game last year went on somewhat smoothly. I was there doing press. Were either of y'all at that game? I can't remember.
I sold my ticket.
I mean, there were the pitch invasions, but that was like, kind of later in the second half. But I mean, I don't know whether maybe the prices end up scaring people off and it's not as big of a crowd for this game. But if it is a big crowd and it's a bunch of people who are like rabid for Messi, we could see some kind of like disorderly stuff go on.
Yeah.
I don't know how much RBA is prepared. I don't know how much Securitas, temporary guys are prepared. I don't know what they have in store. I'm sure they're gonna, they have an expanded budget. I'm sure, but
Harrison PD.
I don't know what the contingencies are. It could get weird. We'll see.
I wonder if they're gonna actually run extra trains that day, because
I think they probably
will.
Like
they should surely, right?
They did that not so long ago,
Right.
when the team wasn't even doing that well. I bet they will. One interesting
So travel by path to get there.
Yeah, one interesting wrinkle to this as well. As we alluded to, Miami's very low in the table still, because all of this big hubbub, all these games that they've won recently, none of them have been in the league, right? So they are currently in last place with 18 points, and they do have a couple games in hands. Solid 11 points lower than us. We're in 11th place now, even though, as we said in our last episode, it's time to shit. We did shit, but still have to do it a couple more weeks to make progress. We've got 3 or 4 teams with 3 points more than us. It's just got to be a grind. On the other hand, though, if we were to beat Miami this week, that would be. It's rapidly approaching almost too late for them to make a run here.
Right.
we could help actually put a nice dent in their season.
If we could put both them and City to bed.
Yeah, because then when we play City in 3 weeks too, they're struggling, I'm sure, as people have noticed. And assuming City doesn't win every game from here till then, that will be an opportunity to sort of end their season, regardless of how we're doing.
As much as we've talked specifically in this episode about, the club should have broader horizons and higher goals, there would be a very characteristic kind of, recent New York Red Bulls move to just, fuck up 2 of the most annoying teams in the league seasons.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be a nice consolation prize for the disaster of this year.
That would be a good motivating factor for me this season. Just kind of small petty goals to carry us through until, we get to the playoffs.
For me, I think and we were talking about the squad a little bit earlier, building blocks potentially for next year are, Reyes, Edelman. Cornell's sort of funny because he's been here for a second now, so it's almost
supposedly tried to leave already.
Yeah, is it just time to go maybe already?
Right.
It could be. Morgan's been hurt all year. Quality player, obviously, but sort of a question mark. But I think those are the two guys you want to get minutes and build around. Let's bin these 2 teams, help end their season, and then maybe a man can dream, a nice little treat and something to set the morale up for next year is if we were maybe to play Philly in a knockout game, in a playoff game, and actually get one over them and knock them out, that could be delightful. Then that would be asking for a lot, that's the dream scenario for this year.
Yeah.
I don't even anticipate we'd be able to make a run to the cup, but that to me is the pipe dream. But
it'd be
beating
nice to
Miami on Saturday and then City would be good.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get a little reputation as the Grim Reaper of season enders.
Right, especially as we talked about last episode too. Curtin doth protest a little bit much, for how Philly's been working us.
Speaking of managers, we're gonna have a midweek game.
That's true. Yeah, we should move on to
week after with New England Revolution, who technically right now are managed by old Red Bulls friend Richie Williams, because our other old Red Bulls friend Bruce Arena has been locked away in some witness protection hideout in Metuchen. Who knows whereabouts he is, because somebody who we don't know accused him of using some kind of bad word. Nobody knows anything about it.
How is this persist? What is the actual
accusation?
We still don't know.
Nobody has any idea. I guess a few journalists have looked into it and gotten stonewalled, but now it's been almost a month now where one of, if not the most famous and influential coach in MLS, has been suspended indefinitely. Oddly and coincidentally and strangely, in the midst of all that, New England has sold their starting goalkeeper for about $20 million, a sale that Bruce Arena was reportedly resisting for most of this summer. So some weird circumstantial stuff going on there. But yeah, there was kind of a funny tweet when the suspension first happened a few weeks ago that was like, free Bruce until I find out what he says and feel bad about tweeting this. Because maybe it turns out that he actually did say something heinous. But in the meantime, it seems kind of weird. Seems kind of like there's something fishy going on. And we like Bruce on this show and don't like the thought of him being wronged if that's being the case. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It's also interesting that, well, it's unclear still, like, when this was alleged to happen, like in what context, right?
No, not
like,
at all.
We don't know if it
even
was...
not even players. I mean, the players have backed him up and said, you know, we love playing for him. There's never been an incident with any of us or anything, but we have no idea what
is going on.
That's gotten him suspended. That happens.
And I do
outside
wonder,
of our realm.
Is Bruce just like at the point of his career where he's like not bothered, or does like, are they just putting enough like NDA heat on him where he just feels like he can't say anything?
Right.
It's like, and especially, you know, even through a surrogate or something, like his assistant
leaking to a friendly journalist.
Right.
Like,
Richie Williams has been assistant forever, you know? So like, it's kind of interesting that his assistant and friend of so many years is continuing to work. Like, you know, if he was being like truly screwed, like presumably his friend would say, fuck this and leave too.
Yeah.
Right?
Not to turn this into the New England Revolution podcast, but New England Revolution gossip podcast. But supposedly this was in some of the reporting early on about it that, well, Richie Williams is his main assistant and has taken over as the interim while he's been suspended. And Bruce Arena is technically like the president, GM, you know, broadest overseer of the soccer operation.
Sporting head.
But he has Kurt Analfo, who people might remember from coaching DC and Kansas City over the years, who's a longtime Bruce friend, who has technically been the sporting director, like the Dennis Hamlet style sporting director, handling the contracts and all that kind of stuff behind the scenes. He's stayed in charge and has been handling the Petrovic sale and just everything that's been going on in the interim. Supposedly, in some of the reporting that happened at the moment suspension happened, said that Arena and Analfo had not been getting along recently. So that's the most amount of daylight that's been given on what exactly might have happened here. So we'll see.
Well, I think the timing is also interesting because it seems like it's definitely been like a New England kind of like they've been trying to put this guy up for sale thing, because Chelsea didn't need a goalkeeper until way after this Bruce stuff happened.
There's the
Does
sale.
Chelsea ever need anything?
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, until they sold or Kepa went to
There's
Real
the
Madrid.
sale end of it that's, you know, that's strange, that maybe hints at some fishy stuff going on with the suspension. But then putting even all that aside, and that we're kind of fond of Bruce aside, kind of an integrity issue for the league, because New England's a contender this year.
They're second place.
New England's near the top of the table, one of the contending teams in the league, and they've just had their coach just bin for unexplained reasons. That seems like a major competitive integrity issue that I'm surprised more New England fans, journalists, whoever, are not kind of screaming bloody murder about right now.
Right. And it's, I guess he's not covered. I mean, they're not part of the players' union, obviously, but you would think that this dragging on for so long would run afoul of something.
Right.
I don't know. And their form
Just
has been
very
good.
strange. Yeah.
They
You think Bob Kraft would cover for that kind of thing too?
Well, him too. Why is he not raising hell if there's something going on? So it's just all weird.
right, because apparently, and you know, the key to this Bruce stint in New England has been that he's just actually been able to charm the Crafts,
Right.
into like actually being like, yeah, you know what, this soccer team is sort of interesting that I own, right? And they seemingly like him. But anyway, New England is the last two games they in the Leagues Cup, they drew and won, lost in penalties Querétaro, and beat Atlas in penalties for whatever that's worth. They put a beat down on San Luis. They lost to us in penalties. But their last two real games were 2-1 win over Atlanta and 4-0 win over DC. Two pretty mid to bad teams. But hey, they're in good form. They're a solid team still. They've still got dangerous players.
We just played them twice, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, we play them, it's like same as it ever was.
Yeah, but it's like, so we just played them at home, too, which is, I think, weirder.
Right. Yeah, and Mark Anthony Kaye, Andrew Farrell, God bless his soul, Dave Romney, Ima Boateng. It's like, are they even allowed to play?
All the stars are here.
Like, actually, I realize I'm not even trying to do this as a bit where I'm actually talking about their lineup more than Miami's lineup right now. Ima Boateng,
it's way more compelling.
Is he actually allowed to play? Like, is anyone allowed to play Ima Boateng if it's not Bruce Arena who's managing them? Like, is that allowed? Fucking Ian Harkes. Incredible. What a bunch of guys.
We have so many DC teams this year.
I think Earl Edwards is the interim keeper now that they sold Petrovic. But
God, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
I was going to say, like, if they had, like, David Ousted or something, that'd be
that
right
would
in
be
the
clutch.
alley.
I think we
Ned
can get,
Grabavoy.
I think 4 points once again this week, even though it's 2 home games. Is
Pretty good
doable.
baseline, yeah.
Let's do it. I think that the boys will be, I think they're going to be a little bit more deferential to Miami than I like based on what, but I think they'll be up for it. I think maybe Tolkien will set an example. And I think we can beat Miami. I think that if it's a question of focus and resolve, I think that also our the way that we play is dangerous, but like I think we do have the midfielders and the engine to harass Busquets and their midfield a little bit more than other teams have been, which gives us more of a chance.
But I mean, there has been a lot of commentary on how, Philly and, maybe a couple of these other teams who have tried to maybe press and, get directly on Messi, and some of these other Miami players have gotten run through. Yeah. Just a lot of space left behind and a lot of space for, Messi essentially to move around. So,
yeah, I mean, I think like we were saying at the beginning of the episode too, where this league is about parity, and that means that any team can beat any other team on any given day. But also, like, I think as a fan, that should mean that we should believe that we could beat any team on any given day either. So,
yeah, I mean, Miami outside of those two guys is pretty weak. So, like, I think if we can,
DeAndre Yedlin, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna say 4 points. 3 on Saturday, 1 on Wednesday is what I'm expecting.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, sure. None of us will be there on Wednesday.
We don't have to disclose that.
Yeah.
We can keep that to ourselves.
I'm on vacation,
Oh, yeah. Where are you going?
I'm going to Lake Placid again.
All right.
Just easy.
Now everyone knows can stay outside your hotel and
put fireworks up in the Adirondacks.
Yeah. Well, anything else? There you go. There's your slop. There's your Messi slop. We barely talked about him, but it's the most we've talked about him all season.
It's Alex!
Bye.